This is Neda, and she's a fine catmugget Shetland ewe. So Rich is going to take us through her whole fleece from the neck to britch and do a tutorial for us.
Alright, so when I'm evaluating fleeces, I like to start with the neck. See what we got here. That should be the best part of the fleece. So you start looking at the neck crimp. You want it to be fine. Fine is an indicator, fine crimp is an indicator of fine fleece. So if the fiber is fine, you should see really small crimp. There are bolder crimps that are also fine. It tends to vary by genetic lines. But in our flock, with our genetics, that's what we tend to look for. We're breeding for the finer crimp because it ends up being a very elastic yarn, something very flexible, what they call bounce. And essentially what it means is it stretches a great deal.
You can even see it there. Yep.
So then we move back to the shoulder. It should still be pretty fine. Now as you go to the front to the back on a Shetland fleece, and pretty much any sheep fleece, you're going to get it coarser as you go backwards. And it could be several microns difference. So if we look at the shoulder here, it's still pretty fine. Hasn't changed a great deal from the neck. So that's a good sign. You can see the fine crimp. Mm-hmm. Now we'll move into the what I call the middle third, right behind the shoulders or right behind the leg.
And all this is coated right now. We just took the coat off.
And again, you see not much of a change.
Very pretty.
Now in the very middle, in the middle third, this is where we would typically take our micron samples. You find the last rib, and you part the fleece. And again, this is what we typically use as a representation of the entire fleece. We do our micron sample, and we'll say she's 23 microns, and that's what we'll put on our products. The wool, the yarn, whatever we're selling. Now if you go back several inches, you typically would start to see a difference now. That you get a little coarser, the crimp should be a little bit bolder, not quite as fine.
Still really nice though.
But in this case, it hasn't changed much. Then we go back to the hip. Now, when you hear people say, well, that sheep falls off in the back, that's typically what you're always saying is the crimp's getting bigger, it's coarser, and it's dramatically different than everything else we've looked at so far in the front and the middle third. In this case, you can see it. The crimp is bolder, but still very good. What you don't want to see is you get to the back, the hips, and it looks like a completely different fleece than what we just saw earlier in the front. You don't want a sheep with 2, 3, 4 different types of fleece on one animal. Not in a Shetland anyway. Now the last thing you look at is the britch. The britch is the really coarser and longer fleece down towards the hocks, the back legs. You don't want a lot of britch. Now sometimes the whole back end of the hips and everything will be britch on a Shetland. That's not what you want. When I did the training with the Shetland Sheep Society, Kate Sharp was very clear that you only want a handful of britch. This really coarse, because you're going to skirt this. When you shear her, this is all going to get taken out. We'll use it for something else because it's still pretty fine.
That's what I use my mill spun yarn for.
But it does come off of the main fleece. So when we're saying she's a 23 micron fleece, we're not including this because that would be kind of a misrepresentation. So if you part the britch, first of all on a cat mug, the britch is going to have a different color because they're darker in the back, underneath, and in the neck area. There's like a dark area that goes all the way around. So you can see the crimp is much bolder, the fleece will be longer.
It's almost kind of hairy in a way.
It can be, it's a lot of outer coat here.
Still really soft though.
And if you go slightly above it before it changed color, you can still see it's a pretty different fleece than what we saw on the rest of the animal.
Okay, awesome. So that's the the diagram of a Shetland fleece from our beautiful Neda. Thank you, dear.